Hello, welcome to Curry Girl Tech Talk. I am Krystal Curry. Thank you for joining. All right, 90% of Americans believe that the nation is facing a crisis in leadership. Over the next 2 episodes, we are going to delve into important aspects of leadership. Why is leadership important, and why I am offering my own leadership book, Elevate. So much has been discussed about leaders over time and what makes a great leader. And that is why I am offering my leadership book and why I created the Elevate 2025 theme as a way to, talk about elevating in every area of your life and to share my leadership journey and what has helped me through corporate business leadership decisions. My book reviews my 5-step leadership framework and also how leaders can make a difference in our world, not just in the corporate environment, which is where I have a lot of my experience, but transcendent leaders who've made such an impact on our world. I hope that it will help you in your leadership endeavors. Leaders directly affect corporations and business in a variety of ways, including revenues, profitability, customer satisfaction, employee attrition, job satisfaction, employee productivity, and much more. That is why investing in your leadership team has a direct return on your investment. Connect with me for my Elevate 2025 seminars, speaking engagements, and invest in making your leaders best of class. So people often say people don't quit jobs, they quit terrible bosses. So what makes people so dissatisfied with the state of leadership? Today, I'm going to review a few of the top complaints of leaders or what people consider horrible bosses and how you can avoid those pitfalls. All right, I recognize that there are several aspects of society that don't get enough recognition. There are several Nobel laureates that have made transcendent impacts across our entire world. And I want to acknowledge them in terms of the leadership that they have provided, the brave men and women who have stepped to the forefront and have been courageous enough to lead us through extraordinary periods of change and lead us to magnificent solutions. Why do 90% of Americans feel that the nation is facing a crisis in leadership? All right, leaders, lean into the conversation. Of course, none of these horrible boss traits define you, but just in case your peer needs some advice, it's nice to know what modern day employees are thinking about leadership approaches and why there is a crisis in leadership. So, all right, here we go. One of the top complaints about leaders is micromanagement. I was actually surprised by this one because I've been reading about this theory of missing leadership, and I was beginning to believe that the biggest complaint would be the opposite of micromanagement. However, micromanagement tends to be one of the largest complaints from employees about leadership. All right, now recognizing that there is a difference between leaders and managers. All right, so I'm not going to go into that conversation right now, but let's define what micromanaging is. Okay. Micromanaging involves excessive control over employees, work decisions, work processes. We are all familiar with that boss who provides a directive, yet does that proverbial looking over the shoulder or incessantly questioning every detail and aspect of every single deliverable. Now, there is a difference between needing communication and status, and that differs from micromanaging the entire process. So here's what that leads to. It leads to the employee feeling disrespected or devalued, sensing your need for control It teaches the employee to only make decisions with your approval. Every single decision seems to need your involvement. So unless there is a necessary process-driven need for your approval, that makes you an impediment to progression. And not to mention, it erodes confidence and trust. So what do you do instead? You empower employees. We empower employees. Empowering employees puts the decision-making back into their span of control. But you can implement regular check-ins if you're concerned about the status of delivery, for instance. Empowering, on the other hand, builds trust, leading employees to believe that you have full confidence in their experience, their expertise, and their ability to deliver. All right, so how many of you know the difference between a leader and a manager? And I know you've heard this before, especially if you're in a leadership position. All right, leaders provide the vision, the inspiration, the motivation, the overall direction that the company is going. They organize people towards a specific goal. Their mission, their vision is the direction that the company is taking to accomplish the overall objectives for the business endeavors. Now, a manager, on the other hand, their focus is on the planning, the organizing, the controlling of resources, the achieving of the specific objectives that align to specific goals. They ensure that processes are followed, okay? So there is a difference, and we are talking about leadership, right? If you're entrusted in a leadership role, your task is to set the company direction and inspire and motivate the company employees. That's why managers are more focused on a business environment or accomplishing tasks, whereas leaders inspire. And leaders don't just necessarily have to be, as I mentioned at the introduction of this episode, the leaders don't necessarily come from just a business environment, right? Leaders inspire in so many different aspects of life, not just business. Leaders have this ability to inspire through their vision and motivate, and they unify people, and that helps us to grow. So let's talk about, the difference between being a leader and a boss, manager. A boss is going to want to control. A leader collaborates. So let's think about that in terms of micromanagement. A boss wants to control. A leader collaborates. A boss focuses on the outcome, pointing fingers, or is self-absorbed. Leaders inspire. They guide by example, and they take responsibility for their team failures as well as their successes. Are you a leader or just a boss? So what we're going to do instead of micromanaging is empower. We're going to empower, and we're going to take a leadership approach. A leadership approach and a leadership mindset is key to elevating. All right, so another common area of complaint about terrible bosses or terrible leadership is inconsistent decision making. All right, this involves not providing clear vision and indecision or indecisiveness, or seemingly making arbitrary decisions that have no reasoning or purpose behind them. This leads to confusion and chaos. Employees may feel that the team lacks direction and that the interjection of unnecessary bureaucracy or arbitrary decisions undermine progress in organization. It can signal to them incompetence. Without clear vision and purpose, employees lack the motivation and desire, which leads to attrition and low job satisfaction. To avoid this, as a leader, be sure to communicate company vision and mission. Employees need to understand how their contributions help the organization achieve the mission, vision, and goals. It is your responsibility as a leader to ensure that the vision is clear. Employees are motivated to achieve their jobs, their goals. Not having a clear vision and indecisiveness are traits that employees loathe. Indecision in leaders can lead to negative consequences, including decreased productivity, lost opportunities, and a decline in team morale. It can undermine trust and confidence in the leader's ability to make sound judgments. When making critical decisions about business, it's important to be decisive and clear about what those decisions are. Everybody is depending on the leader to set the vision and the pace. If you lag behind in making concrete decisions, you can miss key market opportunities that give the company a competitive edge and lead the company forward. All right, the last aspect of perhaps a crummy leader is lack of support or empathy. This one is a bit of a harder category because it involves everything from favoritism, lack of listening, power dynamics, and even conflict management. The gist of it is a leader that perhaps is deficient of emotional intelligence, or what I call PQ, people quotient. It's having the intellectual astuteness and awareness of how people and their emotions, behaviors, and motivations contribute to collective team efforts and leading to get the best possible outcomes from your teams. It also involves having self-awareness and using the power of your influence to affect team behaviors. Without having a high PQ or leaders without emotional intelligence or EQ, this leads to employees describing their leader as egotistical, selfish, or individualistic. Employees desire to have a leader that exudes intelligence, yet humility, empathy, yet competence, integrity, and not entitlement. We want to show employees support and that they are valued, that their efforts are appreciated. And there are many ways that we can do that. One of the ways that we can show employees that they're appreciated is by giving credit to the originator of an idea, showing that we're not selfish, ensuring that we share in the team's failures as well as their successes. Acknowledging that publicly. People want to feel valued. They want to feel seen, and they want to feel heard. Many corporations are focused on economic impacts, technology transformations, and with boards calling for the conservation of cash and restructuring efforts in the midst of all of this AI stuff and, even the Web3 impending changes, are calling for leaders to have focused their efforts on other parts of restructuring business. So leaders are not spending as much time focusing on employee job satisfaction, for instance, nor managing conflict, perhaps. Post-pandemic, we are all weary from the economic upheavals, political dissension, and an onslaught of technology changes. And even the removal of DEI, which was intended to be a unifying agenda. I believe that a critical part of leadership is effective conflict management. Inevitably, we all experience conflict at work. Disagreements and challenges awaken us to the fact that we are all independent thinkers, right? We have our own perspectives, our own experiences and opinions that drive our thoughts. We expect that there are going to be conflicts at work. So the next episode of Curry Girl Tech Talk is dedicated solely to conflict management tips and conflict resolution techniques. Please stay tuned for that in the next week. I've got a couple of guests joining me for that episode, and I am super excited to offer that as a refresher for all of us to focus our efforts on conflict management. How do we get over that last aspect of what some view as a crummy leader is conflict management and conflict resolution? How we do that is important to maintaining employees, having them to be engaged, and contributing to employee and job satisfaction, and helping to lower those attrition costs. I know that your attention is divided with so many demands focusing on all of these technical components, all of these financial components of leading and ensuring that the employees themselves navigate this period of upheaval and change. But the process of how we do that and manage that is just as important as the financial aspects, how we manage our greatest assets, which I say are people, and take care of them, is an important and key aspect of being a great leader. So how to avoid a perception of a lack of empathy or lack of support is conflict management and conflict resolution. We're going to talk about that completely at our next episode. So is one of the ways to avoid being a crummy boss. We want to make sure that we incorporate these conflict management things that crop up on our teams. Inevitably, we're going to have to work through decisions. We are navigating such an important and critical time that every voice matters. And we want to make sure that we're hearing employees and that we navigate these conversations with care. That means being able to have candid conversations as well as being able to take that constructive criticism. There are open debates in our industry sectors about the best approaches to take. Debates are necessary part of doing business and are encouraged for doing business. But how we navigate that conflict and turn those conflicts into resolution is part of being a leader. Giving us the freedom to be constructively candid with the balance of inquiry, yet providing empathy and support. Join me for the next episode of Curry Girl Tech Talk as I take on that approach. We're going to walk through that process with you. I can't wait for that. Refresher for effective conflict resolution and effective conflict management techniques. And I hope that you will join me for that episode of Curry Girl Tech Talk. And then at the end of the month, on May 29th, I am going to be hosting a live, I am going to be hosting a live show where I'm going to give a preview. At the end of May, I am going to give a preview of my leadership seminar. It's absolutely free to enroll, but you do have to register. I want you to register for me. Go online at currygirltechtalk.com, go to Elevate, and click on the free seminar and enroll. And let me know that you're coming. But it is free and live, and I will do a Q&A session at the end. I'm going to give a preview of what the seminar is about and the components of the 5-step framework. And then I will do a live Q&A session. So bring all of your questions, and they can be questions about any of the episodes as well as any questions about my Elevate Leadership Seminar. So join that. I know some of you have questions about, well, what is the 5-step framework? And what does the leadership course involve? And how much time is it? And what am I going to learn? What can I expect? I'm answering all of your burning questions about Elevate seminars at the end of the month. So mark your calendars for May 29th. I will be live for that. I'll be discussing all of your questions and reviewing a high-level review of Elevate seminars, all right, and what it all involves and what all you will receive as a part of the seminar. All right, so next week, conflict management, end of the month, doing a live. I can't wait for that, and I am excited about that. A little nervous too. I'm always transparent about that. A little nervous about that, but super excited for all of you to join me for that. All right. So looking forward to seeing you all and talking to you all soon. I am Krystal Curry. Take care.